All right, let's get started. Good morning, everyone. I'm so pleased to see you all. I really look forward to these meetings. I don't know about you, but I feel a little bit isolated at times when I'm working from home. We're getting into the office a little bit more. Can everybody see my screen okay? Great. Welcome to the March event. We are celebrating our 5th year of helping you help yourself get better at leadership. And it's been super personally rewarding for me to lead the IT leaders group. I love seeing all the people that are participating. Let's get through the announcements so we can get to our great speakers, Matt and Andrea, this morning. So who are we and why are we here? You know, this meeting was created 5 years ago for CIOs and VPs and directors and managers of IT, really anybody with direct reports. And we have a number of people who are individual contributors now who have the aspiration of being a leader at some time. So folks who want to be better leaders and who are in IT typically. What do? We work on our leadership skills by listening to speakers, people who've been there and done that. We network and we provide mentorship opportunities. That's really the core of what IT leaders is. Some quick administrivia, as I mentioned early before we got started, we've switched to the meeting format. So please make sure that you're on mute. So when the dog comes in or when your spouse comes in and hollers at you, that we don't all hear it. We'd sure love to hear from you at the end of the meeting, but in the meantime, let's make sure that you're on mute. If you have any issues, please text me at Doug at 317-502-7622. The May event will be virtual again. So we hope to be physical and virtual by third quarter. Cross your fingers and hope for herd immunity. Maybe we'll all get to sit in the same room again and eat some great Jonathan Bird's biscuits and gravy. Social media, please send me some screenshots. If you could take a couple of screenshots of the group as we're presenting here, it would be super valuable to me. It helps with social media. I think it helps people who've never attended understand how cool this group is. And if you would turn your video on too, it helps all of us to see each other. And we are going to do some breakout rooms today. So, if you don't turn your video on for the big meeting, please turn it on for the breakout rooms. And again, you can text your pictures to me or just post them yourself and I'll share your posts. 317-502-7622 is my mobile and the hashtag is IT Leaders Indy. So we've got a couple of places where you can find out what's going on with IT leaders. The LinkedIn company page was set up by my great assistant when it comes to social media, Rusty Maynard. There's Rusty in his picture there. He's working for Taft Law now. If you've got events that are not related to IT leaders, but you'd like for this group to get line of sight to, please send that to russell.maynard@intergenlink.net. Even if you just find good articles on leadership, we like posting those and we like cross promotion a lot. So please give that some thought. We also have a private LinkedIn group so you can talk to each other and ask questions about vendor validation or hiring and retention or just leadership questions in general. We do limit that. There's no sales reps in that, I guess, except for me. I'm still something of a sales rep, but it's really about you talking with your peers. And then we have maintained a website for many years now, itleaders.org/Indianapolis. That's where you register for these events. And then just a reminder on those other two, they're both the company page and the LinkedIn group are called IT Leaders Indianapolis. And then Rusty maintains a Twitter account to keep things up to date. That's Indianapolis IT. Don't forget about our mentorship program. We've got about a dozen CIOs who've volunteered to be mentors over these years. If you're interested, it's a very self-service oriented program. We really want to see your motivation to get involved in a mentorship. I know that mentorship's been super important in my career. And I've got three amazing mentors. One's no longer with us. He passed on a couple of years ago. But two are still alive and still great friends of mine and great mentors. If you are interested in joining, just email me, doug.theis@expedient.com. By the way, I'm Doug Theis. I'm the founder of IT Leaders. I always forget that part up front. So you can email me and I will send you the one-page engagement program. Back 5 years ago when we started IT Leaders, we also started the IT Leadership Boot Camp, which is the best $975 you'll ever invest in yourself. This is a Leadership 101 course led by Lou Russell over at Mosier. I see we've got a couple of Mosier people on the meeting today. This is about 20 hours of content spread over 4 sessions. It is comprised of self-assessments and 360 assessments and emotional intelligence training. I know it's hard to believe that IT people need emotional intelligence training, but, and then there's also a lot of tabletop exercises, just things like having those difficult conversations. I miss both this meeting and the Leadership Boot Camp at the Expedient data center. I really miss seeing all the people and hearing about what they've learned. So I look forward to hosting that again at some future point. You can email me or you can email Lou about this.
21st was it. Yeah. We're not prepared.
Oh, Brian, I think you're not muted there.
To get prepared, including.
There we go. All right. Got a cool announcement today. Last year we did 3 all IT community panel webinars. Jeff Tunn and I got those things started and we looped in women in high tech on the 3rd one. This year we've got SIM involved as well. So mark your calendars on this. We'll have registration up on itleaders.org later this week, but we've got 4 groups participating and the topic is resilience. I don't know about you, but I could use a little bit more right now. I think we're all a little fatigued. Stephanie Crevens is going to be moderating. Stephanie has spoken at IT Leaders in the past. She covered this topic recently at an Indie CIO Network lunch, and I just think it's so important. We're nailing down the 5 panelists right now. I'm excited about the group. I think it's going to be really cool. It's IT leaders from a variety of industries and a variety of perspectives. You'll hear more about that in a couple of days, but make sure you attend this. This will go from 5 to 6:15 p.m. and we'll go a little bit longer, so it shouldn't interrupt your workday. And I think it'll be great. So the next version of this meeting, the bi-monthly peer group, will be May 11th. Please note that that's the 2nd Tuesday of May. These meetings are typically held on the 3rd Tuesday, but we had some conflicts on the 3rd. So mark your calendars on this one, and the registration will be up later this week as well. Our speakers, we're going to have a small panel of business leaders. I'm trying to nail down the other panelist right now. We've got a good candidate, but I don't have a firm yet, so I didn't want to announce that person. Kevin Gearhart, though, the president of Rehab Medical, one of the fastest growing companies here in Indy, will be one of those people. And they're really going to talk about the value of IT from a business perspective. One of the interesting side effects of COVID is that cloud adoption has advanced from, between 2 and 5 years, depending on who you read. And the business has finally realized that IT was telling the truth when they talked about being a business enabler and a competitive advantage builder. So we're really going to hear from the business side to make sure that we're not hallucinating that's something real. And then Warren Leonard from Finish Line, the CIO of Finish Line, will be speaking as our guest CIO speaker for that event. Remember, it's the 2nd Tuesday, not the 3rd Tuesday. And this is the only meeting this year that'll be like that'll be off of our normal cadence. So this is a chance where you can speak. Short, please be brief on this. Pay attention for your muting and your non-muting, but we want to hear from you. Who's looking for their next position and who has an open position to be filled? Let's start with who's looking. Please shout out.
This is Brian Fullwider. I'm looking for an infrastructure position, director VP level with an organization. I'm in transition from a CNO where I was one of the directors in the infrastructure area.
Thanks, Brian. Anybody else? All right. Who has a position to be filled? This doesn't have to be a leader. It could be an individual contributor as well. Any roles open right now? Any of the attendees?
Real quick, Troy here from 22 Miles Digital Signage Software. We're currently looking for a digital signage creative project manager. So project manager with a little bit of touch of graphic knowledge is who we're looking for right now.
Great. Thank you, Troy. Anyone else? Speak up if now's your time. All right. Thank you. Thanks to both of you for sharing that information. Finally, some gratitude. IT leaders wouldn't exist without my employer, Expedient. We are a cloud services provider. We've been in the data center business for 20 years. We've been doing VMware-based cloud for 14. And we also do disaster recovery and multi-cloud. You can learn more about Expedient. And I wanted to share a couple of events. I'm going to start sharing some learning events. Brian Fullwider, by the way, thanks for commenting nicely on some of the events that we've done recently in the Indy CIO Network event the other day. But a couple of things that are on our radar here in the very near term. Most everyone's multi-clouded these days, meaning that you're operating your data center and your cloud or your IT estate in multiple clouds. We'll be talking about that tomorrow at 12:30. How to draw a perimeter in and out of all those clouds. How can you do that? And then later in the month, we've got a number of different people, including Bob Evans, not the food maker, but the podcast host of Cloud Wars, really talking about what the challenges these days are with multi-cloud and how that looks. So if you're interested in either one of those, grab your camera, which is also known as a phone these days, I think, and take a picture of those, or just go to the Expedient Resources page. So finally, I can shut up and let the real speakers talk. Let me introduce to you Andrea Butcher, the president of the HRD group. She's going to be talking about your personal best, and that's really what we're going to focus on when it comes to the breakout rooms today. And then my good friend, Matt Belanger from Denison Parking, who is going to talk about the from bud to boss phenomenon of really moving from an engineer and an individual contributor all the way up to an executive position. We're super glad to have both of you. And I'm going to turn it over to you right now. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, Doug. Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for being here. It's great to see all of you virtually. Thank you to Doug and the Expedient team for the invitation and an opportunity to speak today. I'm excited to share some of my story and a few things I've learned along the way. I hope there's something here for each of you, no matter where you are in your career journey and whether you aspire to be an executive or continue to grow personally and professionally in a different way. So let's talk about our journey this morning, the journey of this session. And we'll briefly touch on the concept of executive, and then we'll roll into my story. And finally, I'd like to share with you a few things that I found particularly useful to me. So this concept of executive, what does it actually mean? What defines an executive? Is it a leader with multiple teams, a certain number of people, or size of budget? Maybe it's P&L responsibility, or perhaps the leader of a major corporate function. We can pick apart any of those definitions, and the truth is that the definition of an executive is context dependent. For the purposes of our discussion today, let's define an executive as a business leader who also has some domain expertise. If you want to prepare for an executive role, recognize that the very best things you can do are to target intentionally target a diversity of experiences through different roles that will prepare you with the background and judgment that you'll need to operate as an executive. Those experiences should include both additive skills that stretch what you already have, like moving from dev to systems engineering to test to support, all within the development organization, to combinatorial assignments that compel you to learn entirely new skills outside your comfort zone, like moving from product development to product management, sales, marketing, or other areas of the business. Sometimes you'll hear this as T-shaped skills, but I've come to think that doesn't fully weight the combinatorial value of the sort of the wings of that T. I'll talk about some of my additive and combinatorial experiences in my story. It's also critical to have executive role models, an individual or set of individuals who models the behaviors and patterns that you aspire to deliver. This can be inside or outside your org, formal or informal, and I would suggest considering a few role models or coaches that fill unique roles. So preparing for an executive role, getting those experiences is critical to being effective in your primary responsibility as an executive, setting the context for others on your team and across the org to take difficult decisions, and sometimes taking those difficult decisions yourself and having the wisdom to know when to do which, and building the relationships and connections critical to enabling those decisions in an informed, collaborative way that's aligned with the values and objectives of the organization. We all have different styles and personalities, and before we get into my story, there's a classic HBR article on the different leadership archetypes. Without analyzing each one, I would offer that successful executives may have a primary principal style, but are able to understand and apply multiple personas in different contexts. It's also important to know which styles do not resonate with you and ensure that you don't find yourself in an environment that relies on that archetype in order to be successful. Neither you nor the org will succeed if your styles are not aligned with the environment. For a bit of foreshadowing, I'll share with you that I think of myself primarily as a builder, but I also deeply enjoy the communicator, coach, innovator, and change catalyst personas. And so for me, the anti-pattern to watch for is the blocker. Averse to change out of fear and risk. Risk management is critical, of course, but it's toxic if it's in a culture that's heavily weighted toward negative personal consequences instead of collaboratively managing risk. So with that background on the importance of a diversity of experiences and varied approaches, let's talk about my journey. Even in this brief overview, see if the elements of builder and additive and combinatorial experiences comes through. So broadly thinking, I think of my journey in 3 stages. My early career as an engineer and systems architect when I was primarily building things. In my case, that was high reliability, distributed compute clusters, sort of cloud before the cloud. And my primary area of expertise was systems engineering, application performance, and network switching, routing, and firewalls. From there, I'll share the story of how I came to manage projects and programs where I was building processes, and then as an executive where I focus on building people and organizations. The concept of builder is a thread that ties together the various stages of my journey. Now, on this journey, we all carry a backpack. This backpack has all the intentional skills and experiences that we've acquired along the way. Each time we're intentional about a new experience, we add more to the backpack, and the shape and form of our backpack changes, but a backpack is always finite. We can't add without leaving some things behind along the way. The proud nerd in me would love to stay current on the finer points of Kubernetes orchestration or Databricks, but I know that there are others that I can count on to carry those skills in their backpack, so I have room in my backpack for the things that are uniquely me and that are my responsibility to carry at this stage of my journey. And just like with a real life backpack, the larger the pack, the more fitness we need to carry the load. And that fitness comes with deliberate practice, even as the journey changes course. something I hope comes through in my story. And so to share a little bit about my early career, I started as an engineer in product development and was very much an engineer's engineer. I was focused on writing code and building systems. I had a very utilitarian form follows function approach with no need for what I perceived as ornamentation, right? My work was buried deep in the telecom network, but by analogy, I would be the person who designed this building or these chairs, right? But as my exposure grew and I had the additive experiences of a systems engineer and architect, I had the opportunities to practice and develop relating complex topics to diverse audiences. I found a passion for communicating and visualization, for corporate technical storytelling, if you will. I didn't recognize or appreciate it at the time, but growing and developing those skills proved critical in two ways. It allowed me to communicate concepts and drive alignment between groups who might not otherwise come together. Think product and marketing, staff and management, company and customers. And two, it earned me exposure to organizational leaders who would later influence my career. It was powerful relationship building. And as you progress through the leadership ranks, your next promotion is not determined by your boss or your boss's boss. It's determined by a committee of diagonal relationships. And those diagonals need to be more than a supporter, more than an ally. They need to be advocates. And it was that relationship building and communication that brought about my first big career change, my first combinatorial experience. I'd always envisioned continuing to grow linearly in my engineering skills. I deeply love the technical work, the process of discovery, design, build, launch, lifecycle management. I was even the lead author on a few patents when a really revered program manager in the organization who reported through a different executive chain decided to retire. I had achieved a level of visibility to the executive team because I'd refined my ability to communicate complex topics. The executive leader of the product delivery org asked me to take a role in his org as an expansion assignment, right? Sort of backfill that retirement. I was unqualified at the time, and I was initially very hesitant to make that move because it was stepping outside of my comfort zone. There was no guarantee of success, of course, and I wasn't convinced that stepping off my existing trajectory was the maze bright path. I'll save the full details of that story for another time, but with some trusted counsel, I decided that it was a risk worth taking for the opportunity to learn new skills. And I've always loved learning new skills. Of course, I started off woefully, embarrassingly inadequate. I was a really good engineer, but I didn't understand the classic project management or agile or other parts of the business like manufacturing, supply chain, finance. I couldn't read a P&L, support, marketing, any of that. Things that are foundational. I was very uncomfortable. I worked really hard and went from managing low-risk projects to large and complex programs. It didn't happen overnight, of course, but I eventually learned the skills and developed an intuition and style so that I was once again comfortable in my skin. And again, my ability to communicate and facilitate alignment was a big factor in delivering those large programs. And so with my experience building and launching new offerings, my cross-functional relationships across the business, and I'd like to think my once technical background, I was invited to participate in the due diligence of a potential acquisition of a customer for whom I served as an internal client advocate. It was a short-term tactical request. I knew nothing about how I would contribute. I could hardly spell due diligence. It was an entirely different cast of characters in the company, essentially a different company. And I went in thinking I would simply lend a hand in whatever way I could, right? I'm here to help. I had no long-term dreams or the background to contemplate a future opportunity in that space. Ultimately, the acquisition proceeded forward, and I had an opportunity to take a lead role in a part of that integration. And that was tremendous learning because it leveraged my background launching products, but with a totally different group. And we had to challenge built-in assumptions from both teams, really. And much of what we did was first of a kind in the company. And as with all integrations, we had the added dimension of integrating new people into the business. And the people dimension of an integration can be particularly challenging. Most of us choose to work where we are, but imagine waking up one morning working for a company different than what you thought you were working for and maybe you competed with. And as a brief aside, if you're considering opportunities or seeking new challenges, if you have an opportunity to work on an M&A related item, take it. It'll be intense, but you'll work on hard problems with some of the top talent across the org on a flagship initiative. It's the very definition of a combinatorial experience. And through a combination of outstanding work by others and some great market timing, that integration worked out very well. So well that the company decided to strategically acquire other similar offerings. And although even today I feel like I played an exciting but ultimately small part in that success, I was asked to build the team that would support the practice of integrating and productizing those new offerings. Again, I was hesitant about getting farther from the deep technical skills that served me so well in my early career. I felt like it was potentially a turning point for me, that with more water under the bridge, perhaps I wouldn't be a viable technical resource even after all that time. I was looking in the rearview mirror, of course, but because of who was asking me, the focus I knew the company was placing on that space and the opportunity to build something totally new, I overcame that hesitation and went about sharing a vision with some of the best internal resources in the company. We built an amazing team, a destination organization. We grew revenue and delighted customers. And even though we were on the product side, we were essentially an internal service organization, a lot like an IT organization. In addition to learning a ton about M&A and building a playbook, I was able to expand into people leadership and found that to be incredibly satisfying. I was very intentional about adding this particular combinatorial skill to my backpack. I knew that the success of the team depended on the culture we built and modeled that to our team and the teams we worked with right out of the gate, so that everyone knew that whomever they were working with on the team, they would get a consistent experience. And because of the breadth and visibility of that role, I was fortunate to develop a network of executives and leaders who I could reach out to for guidance, counsel, and coaching. And in building those relationships, I also cultivated advocates who were actively supportive of me, even when I wasn't in the room. And so coming off half dozen integrations with 20 plus product launches, 51 GAs, who's counting, the team was positioned to execute largely autonomously. And while I continued to lead the team, I was able to provide direct leadership to a massive divestiture with incredible visibility. And afterward, the team was in a great position for continued success. And with a new senior executive driving change in the org, I was invited to take my next career step, my next combinatorial experience, bringing together multiple global IT teams, supporting a 3,000 person product development org. Again, I was uncertain this time about being adjacent to the product team instead of deeply part of the team, and about leading an org of 250 global folks. I'd worked with global teams since very early in my career, but never managed global teams. And the mission of transforming that developer experience was a critical strategic initiative. But the relationships I developed over the years engendered camaraderie and trust with the executive team. And my background in product gave me a level of credibility with the staff and the line managers who were our customers. And finally, I was able to leverage my interest in learning about the technical aspects of what we were delivering to build new relationships with the team I was leading. I set about intentionally extending my people leadership and organizational building skills. I became an advocate of design thinking, of understanding pain points, ideating on the future and the value of user feedback, and particularly fusing design thinking with agile practices as a way of bridging technical teams to the extended organization. I developed a framework, a set of tools, some of which I've highlighted here, that allows an organization to understand and communicate the value it delivers. From there, my wife and I were looking to relocate our family back to the Midwest. I took a role in a mid-sized organization that was also looking to transform the way they deliver value. I was able to engage the people in a very different way than they had become accustomed. We embarked on several transformational initiatives in terms of the technology, but more importantly, the way the team looked at themselves and was viewed by other parts of the business. I was able to stage several technology initiatives and provide visibility for folks who would not otherwise have had the opportunity. I really enjoyed the people and the mission, and I was sad that role ended before we fully realized the vision. And today I focus on corporate leadership and enterprise transformation. In this role, I bring together all the skills and experiences, the additive and combinatorial that I've added to my backpack along the journey, and continually add new skills to my backpack. I love the prospect of taking an org with great people that's not accustomed to change and usually burdened with legacy tools and processes, and embarking on the journey of what we would call enterprise digital transformation, right? I'm adding entrepreneurship and corporate leadership to my backpack, and I've been fortunate to sponsor and lead the major corporate investments to replumb our entire tech stack. New ERP, HR systems, CRM, and analytics platforms integrated with the line of business apps completely changed the way we work and deliver value. I first heard the phrase about not letting a crisis go to waste when I inherited a program that was reporting yellow and it was really red with elements going purple. How many of us have been there? I needed to find a way to communicate that in a way that didn't devalue the team or throw my predecessor under the bus. And in this last year of COVID, I've increased my focus on compassion and adaptability and highlighted my sensitivity to change fatigue, especially after we introduced so much change, right? And it's really hard to launch new strategic initiatives and replumb business processes when people are worried about getting sick and aren't sure how to support their kids and families. So being mindful of the whole person has never been more important. And it also helped me sharpen my focus on must do versus want to do. So let me quickly share a few things that I've discovered along the way. First, I don't want to leave you with the impression that my journey has been easy or straightforward. There are ups and downs, twists and turns, and sometimes the road is totally washed away. It's easy to lose that sense of self-worth and your place in the world. The key point is to know that the journey never turns out exactly as you envisioned. And for those twists and turns, I've added to my backpack two important perspectives. The first, that outcomes are not determined by events alone, but by a combination of the events and your response to those events. And second, that your self-worth is not determined by your circumstances. So to summarize, I'd like to highlight these points. The journey is the thing. Seek out those additive and especially combinatorial skills and experiences. Allow yourself to be comfortable being uncomfortable. Understand what leadership archetypes resonate with you and develop, refine, and hone them with intent. Build a persona, an engagement model for which you're known internally and externally. Connect your dots to find meaning. Have a map for your journey. In fact, have 3 maps that envision the future so that you have a perspective on optionality and internalize that the only thing you know about the future is that it won't turn out as you envisioned. And because you can't really map somewhere you haven't seen, focus more on pointing your compass in the direction you'd like to go and use your map to connect the threads of your journey so far. And remember that you're not on the journey alone. Build a network of folks you can count on and who can count on you. And each of the characters in the journeys you see here had broad support networks without which they would not have succeeded. Building a network of folks who have a shared perspective on the value you deliver is foundational for career advancement. And find ways to prototype the experiences that you're looking for, to explore the next step on your journey. And when you commit, make your choices emotional and irrevocable. Be open to that next step, even if it's not on your map. Remember, you've been intentional about what's in your backpack, and that preparation will serve you well. The sequence is not linear and fixed. The very fact that you're intentionally packing your backpack demonstrates that you're a lifelong learner with the skills to tackle that next stop on your journey. Carve your path. Turn your journeys into adventures by weaving a thread. When looking for your next great journey, find where the waters are flowing. that's where the valuable resources will be. Look for enterprise visible programs like M&A opportunities or other corporate strategic initiatives. You'll meet amazing people and add valuable skills to your backpack. And regardless of the other skills and experiences you bring, being able to communicate, foster alignment, and set context are foundational. With that, I hope you found this story interesting and useful. I'll turn it over to you, Andrea.
Well, can we all give Matt a virtual round of applause for that? You know, it takes courage to show up and tell your story. And thank you for modeling the way for us, because now it's all of your turn. So Matt set us up well for the conversation that we're going to have now. While I'm pulling up the slide deck, I'd love to ask you a quick question. I know that Doug encouraged everyone in advance of today to think about a personal best. And I reminded you a few minutes ago in the chat, if you hadn't done that already, to think about a time you were at your best as a leader. And I'm curious what that was like for you, not the experience itself, but reflecting on a time when you were at your best as a leader. So tell me in the chat, was that easy? Was that hard for you? Did something immediately come up? Were there lots of experiences that emerged? For some reason, I'm not seeing the chat now. I'm just going to stop for a second so I can get that.
I've got an eye on it.
Great. Yeah, if you could be my eyes on the chat, that would be great. Because we're in this together, right, Doug?
You bet. Yeah, we've got two difficult so far. Took a bit of time, should have reflected more. Recent experiences are easy to recall. Productive. Yep. Challenges.
Yeah, all good.
Which means pain, right?
Yeah, you know, in reflecting on Matt's story, he talked a lot about the journey and the uncertainties and the twists and turns. And so no doubt we can all relate to that. So what we're going to do over the next half an hour or so, I've got a few setup slides here to get you thinking more about a time when you were at your best as a leader. That reflection is so important, as Matt suggested. And then based on that, we'll synthesize the outcomes of that across your stories, and you'll see some common themes, no doubt. And so I'm going to talk then a little bit about a system for leadership and growth. So my entire career has been in the talent leadership development space. I'm an executive coach. I've worked, my 20 years career have been split between, inside talent, executive leadership roles, and then consulting roles. And so I've been so fortunate to work with leaders all over the world, supporting their growth and development. And I just get so passionate about that. And what I've done in this brief presentation is just pull together some key things. I would love to spend the rest of the week with all of you, really diving into your stories and the things that really jazz you up and the things that trip you up, because it's in the awareness of that we grow and we learn. It's also in the acceptance of that we grow and we learn. But to kick us off, this visual is such a great visual that we all get. We get that when a drop of water hits a still pond, it ripples out. And it's an interesting way to think about your leadership and your journey. And even this morning, in the few hours that you've been awake, you have influenced, everything that you've said, every email that you've sent, every text message that you sent. It's ripples. Even the thoughts that you have thought are ripples going out. And the important thing for leaders is, do you know what kind of ripples you are creating? It's the awareness of your impact. It's paying attention to those people that you're influencing, leading. And that's where the real value comes from. Doug, you said in the setup, that the purpose of this forum is to help you get better at your leadership. And here's the thing, guys, All of our jumping off points are different, but the thing that we all have in common is when it comes to getting better as a leader, none of us will ever check the box on that. I love that, because we can't separate our growth as leaders from our growth as human beings. And we know that we're in this life to grow and evolve. And so it's so important to always be paying attention to those ripples, because the ripples shift and change, don't they? As Matt described, as the journey shifts and change. And we know that those ripples are impacting people. So leaders make a difference. I want to reflect on your personal experience with bosses that you've had in your career. So once again, Doug, I'm going to ask for you to be my eyes in the chat here. Think about the worst leader and the best leader that you've ever had. No doubt, some people immediately come to mind for you. But what I want you to think about, so on a scale of 0% to 100%, what percent of your talent and energy was utilized by your worst leader and your best leader? For me, I was a consultant at an organization called Flashpoint for many years, and Krista Skidmore is the primary owner of that business. And she was so good at leveraging strength and putting me in positions to grow and proportionate with the expertise that I have. And so when I think about that relationship, probably 90 to 95% of my talent she utilized. If I think way back to early in my career, I was an HR generalist in a global organization. And the leader that I had was very hierarchical in nature. Everything had to go through her. I felt disempowered and a lot of times like really unable to influence. I think about that relationship and really maybe like 10 to 15% of my talents she utilized. So Doug, what's coming through the chat?
For best leaders, it's low.
You mean worst leaders, it's low?
I'm sorry. Yeah, I think.
I was hoping that was the case.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I got it backwards because people are putting it in different formats. Yeah, worst leaders, it's low. It's 40% is the most I see. It's more like 15, 10, 20.
Yep. Okay.
And then 90 to 95, it seems to be very common across the best.
Yeah. So that's pretty consistent. So this comes from Jim Kouzes and Barry Posner's The Leadership Challenge. It's probably a book and research. These guys have been researching for over 40 years. I've worked with them for about 20. And they use facilitators around the world. So I've been so fortunate to get to facilitate the research. And so 40 years of research, and every several years they publish another book. They're working on a book that will be published in 2022 right now. In 2017, when they executed this round of research, it came out very consistent with what I'm hearing Doug report. On average, respondents said that their worst leader only used 31.1% of their talent, juxtaposed with the best leaders. So isn't that interesting? I mean, so here's the thing. The reason I share this with you, and because you are technical leaders, and I'm fortunate to get to work with a lot of technical leaders, think about like, as you're coming into your career, what made you successful is getting results on your own. Suddenly, when you have a team and you're expected to get results through them, it's a very different mindset, isn't it? And it is a mindset of leveraging the strengths and the talent of the people in front of me. That's very different than leveraging my own strengths. So it's a mindset shift. And so I suspect in your stories of when you're at your best as a leader, I suspect that we're going to see that tapping into others as a key part of that. So experience is the best teacher. When we take the time to reflect back, we're in such a good position to learn, and it lends itself then to your stories. Think about Matt's journey, right? Matt took us through this journey, and then what did he say? Here are the things that I learned, because he's taken time to reflect on that. And what's really cool about that then is that he's got all of those learnings that he'll take with him into the future. Again, because we're always evolving. Just having a psychology background and being a coach and I'm really fascinated by how people grow. And you know what I've distilled in all of my personal experiences? Like the times when I have grown the most, the time that the leaders I'm working with have grown the most, it's when there's this beautiful combination of both grace and truth. So grace, and that it is a safe environment in which to grow, someone who believes in me, someone who cares about me, someone who's taking the time to listen. And there's truth, there's discipline, there's honesty about like, Andrea, you're getting in your way, or here's a blind spot you have, or so isn't that great? I mean, it's accountability and support, the combination of those. So I'm curious how that showed up in your stories. So Doug is going to set up some breakout rooms. While he is getting that pulled up and ready to go, let me just talk through what we're going to do now. So we've told you a couple of times, right? We told you before today, I mentioned in the chat right away, think about, we asked then, how's that going? So hopefully you've got an experience that's come to mind. The thing that I'm really most interested in your experience is what you actually did, those actions, those behaviors, those choices that you make. What did you do that lend itself to a personal best? So in your breakout room, Doug's going to set up groups of 3 or 4. So they'll be small enough that you'll all have at least a couple of minutes to share. But here's my ask of you, because I have facilitated this exercise a lot, it works best when there is a facilitator in the room. Otherwise, 15 minutes can go by and you've heard one story. So when you get in the room, quickly assign a facilitator. So maybe Brian says in his group, Brian will say, hey, I'll serve as facilitator. And then Brian's task is just to watch time, make sure everybody gets 2 to 3 minutes. And then Brian will say, okay, now let's reflect on the common themes that we heard. That way, when we get back together, you can share some of those in the chat. So Brian, I can see your face, so I know you were listening. Do you mind repeating back just real quickly what we're going to do right now? I want to make sure everyone's clear.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about some of the best times we've had with leadership and the facilitator. One of their main goals is to kind of keep track of the clock.
You got it. So if anybody has any questions, you can ask Brian, because he totally knows what we're doing and is good to go. Everybody's hoping they're in Brian's group. All right, Doug, let's get those rooms set up.
All right, here we go.
We'll bring you back in 15 minutes.
Looking good so far. Really like the pace. Loved your presentation, Matt.
Yeah, great job, Matt.
I appreciate that. Thank you, guys. That's means a lot.
Small
Andrea,
group today. We have about 30. We have about 28 right now. We had about 4 drop off when they realized they were going to have to participate. And I think the pre-work actually probably scared some people off, but I'm perfectly all right with that. I think it's probably the best thing. Do you really want to get better, or are you just filling your calendar with another meeting?
Yep, exactly. Andrea, I meant to ask you, as I was listening to your talk track, are you familiar with the radical candor?
Oh,
work?
yes, we love it.
Yeah, you're man, just that caring personally, challenging directly.
Yeah,
I was like, that
yeah,
lines up really well with
grace, it's grace and truth, isn't it?
Yeah.
You got it.
That's really good.
Yeah, and you're right. There's so much research and so many models that validate that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I get a good amount of good-natured teasing, because I will often do the, here's the horizontal axis and the vertical axis, and then there's something and something, right? Our president will always joke, like, I think Matt spent some time at IBM as a consultant, because he does, like, that's a very consultant-y sort of thing.
It is, yes. Y-axis, x-axis. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, unfortunately, life is more like a 7-dimensional diagram, which is far harder to draw.
Mhm.
Right, right.
I noticed a couple of comments in the chat about managing away from your bad boss, as a starting behavior rather than managing toward some of the good behaviors that you respect. I was super guilty of that when I was a young manager.
Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure.
And that can be a good policy, you can take that too far, or it can be a very practical approach early on. But I do think pursuing good is a lot better overall strategy than avoiding the bad.
Yeah, yeah. You sometimes see it almost as a survival mechanism, right? And then, how do you work through that to find the common ground to work toward the good, right? And yeah. Doug, it strikes me, I know you love to post the videos of this afterward. You may want to do a little trimming. You still got the recording going. You may want to pause the recording until the breakouts come back, and then trim this little section, which has been just the three of us here, and restitch it back together.
Yeah, I think so. We'll certainly review that and see how it fits or doesn't fit.
There is a feature you can pause the recording and then resume it.
If you don't mind, let's continue talking, and if it doesn't seem like it fits well, we'll chop it right back out. But yeah, I think it's good. It's positive. I'm worried that I'm going to forget to start again, quite frankly.
Yeah, I hear you. What do the two of you think about that comment I made about the transition to leader? That mindset of getting results through my team versus my own. I mean, is that something that you all talk about? I mean, for me, I just think that's so critical to get that mindset shift, because I see a lot of new leaders nobody tells them that. And so of course they naturally just do what they've always done, and it doesn't work.
Yes. So when I had not yet become a manager, but I had a manager who was amazing. And maybe I told you this story, Andrea, but she was just fantastic. And she really had sort of two pieces of advice for me, right? One was, yes, you will have to learn to get results through others, and then also recognize that not everyone will drive with the intensity and the passion that you drive with, right? That got you to where you are and where you will go. And you'll have to recognize that there is a distribution, right? And that would, it'll be hard for you, because you'll just expect people, well, hey, I did X, Y, and Z in ABC time or whatever. I figured that out. Why can't you do that?
Well, that's a really good point. Isn't that consistent with this research, right? I mean, so rather than looking for drive in everyone, you're looking for what is their talent, their strength. How can I leverage that? Yeah.
Yes.
It was a total blind spot for me. I didn't have the luxury of, even though I was taking over a mentor's job, he didn't mention that to me. So it looked more to me like 2 jobs at once, 80 hours worth of work crammed into 40 hours. Right. And I thought, I'm efficient. I can do a lot of work, and I've got a work ethic. I can do it. So I had to learn that the hard way, Andrea.
Yeah. Well, again, experience is the best teacher, right, Doug?
Bruised elbows and skinned knees are are my best learnings.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I had a very similar experience, so I can very much relate to that. But we're better for it. And I don't know if I would have gotten there without that experience. I needed it in my path to really grow.
Yeah.
Sure. Andrea, how much of your constituency, your client base, has access to leadership training apart from you? I mean, I know Duke Realty has leadership training here. I know One America has leadership training. I think Lilly still has it. I'm not sure that there's a lot more, and it's really in the big monster companies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, you're right. I think organizations, a lot of our clients that are larger, all have internal teams. And so our role is more like extra set of hands or expertise in a particular content area. So like being certified in emotional intelligence, for example, they don't have anybody on their team and they want to do some work on that. But yeah, I mean, for a lot of like Bosma is a good example. So I've worked with them for years, and basically they outsource their leadership development to us. I mean, we work really closely with their CEO and their executive team and their head of HR, but they're not doing any of it internally.
Yeah, I mean, I find it extremely rare. And that was my hallucination back when I talked to Jeff Ton about starting this group, is no one even had access to it unless they went out and did it themselves. So
Right. That's, oh, you're speaking my language. We're doing our part to try to change that. Yeah, because there's some, I'll share it later. Ken Blanchard, I don't know if you know his organization. He's been around for a long time, but some research that they published a couple of years ago, 60% of all new managers fail in their first 2 years. And when they dug in, so nobody's surprised by that. Like when you hear that, nobody's ever surprised. But when they dug into why that is, the number one reason is because they weren't equipped. They were not given any mentoring, training, coaching to support them in that new role.
yeah,
That was one of the things that really attracted me to the sort of large company early and middle career, was that opportunity to have that corpus of people who had gone through that and could serve as that, mentor and guide, and at all levels, right? At technical level, management level, leadership, right? I mean, that was just, I viewed as table stakes for an organization that I was.
You got it.
Yeah. Right.
You got it.
I have a really cool story to tell you. It's really not directly related to leadership, but there's a young lady on the call, Christy Brandt, who I met years and years ago when she was working for one of my mentors, and she reached out to me. She had joined DCS, the state of Indiana, one of the largest agencies, Department of Child Services, and as an administrative assistant, and talked to me about recommendations I had for working her way into IT. And she had a lot of interest. She was doing some self learning on Salesforce because they had just implemented Salesforce as a way to track their clients. So on her own, she decided to do that. I encouraged her to do more and to use social media as a way to highlight the things she had learned and the power she'd gained in doing a better job around that. And then to talk to the department members, the individual contributors, I thought were a good place to start, to let them know where her interests were. And she posted, I think it was yesterday, that she is now an analyst for the Department of Child Services and Salesforce and IT. She made her dreams come true.
Oh, that's so great.
Oh my gosh. I had tears in my eyes when I read it.
I bet you
That's
did.
really cool.
It was so cool. And, she did it all herself. I gave her a few words of encouragement. She made it all happen herself.
Yeah, but I mean but it's such a testament to someone believing in you, right? I mean, you might have just been the nudge she needed to make that step.
Yeah.
And Salesforce really has a nice body of work that you can use to go from nothing to where you can, right? They have invested very heavily in, they call them trailheads, right? These speaking of journeys and paths, and right, they've done a nice job there. It's really cool.
When I saw your Lewis and Clark map, I immediately thought of Jeff Town on
I
calls.
did too.
Oh, don't think that wasn't intentional, right? I mean, yeah, I was thinking of what to put on the on that slide, and I originally started with, well, I want to have sort of 3 fictional, and I said, well, the first 2 are obvious, right? And then for that third, I was like, well, we got to go with Lewis and Clark, right?
Well played. That got his attention for sure.
I'm sure.
I'm going to invite everybody back in 30 seconds.
Great. Brian, how did it go?
It went good. Couple key points came up. One was I think one of the big ones was open communication, then change of mindset when you go into a new role. We all kind of felt the same way about, we all had, change of role responsibilities, and how kind of the best comes out at that point.
Yeah, it's incredible to see that happen when you create that space for openness, right?
Yes.
The stuff that emerges. I mean, that's where we get the best talent, the best energy from folks.
Well, I've always believed in it takes a group of people to really come up with, good solutions, good stories.
Yeah, you got it. Because we can play off of each other and we have different strengths and different experiences. So it's the combination of those. There's a synergy in that.
Well, I love whiteboarding sessions, right? Get to a room and just
Oh, yeah.
open season. Throw it there's no bad thought. We may not go down that path, but I want to hear it anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so good. Yeah, I mean, what you're describing is like creating that space that we were talking about earlier, that space that's non-judgmental, that's open. I mean, that's where grace occurs. And so stuff comes up.
Right. I just want to, hopefully I can find a new organization that kind of believes in that also, that I can continue that practice.
You'll find it, Brian. I'm quite confident you'll find it.
For sure.
3,
Yeah, write it
2,
down. I would encourage you
1.
to write it down. Write down what it is you want. I have found that to be so helpful, that casting a vision.
Right.
That you've got real clarity in. So welcome back, everyone. So Brian has just been sharing the outcomes of their conversation. Please, in the chat, share 2 to 3 themes that emerged. And while we're waiting for things to come through in the chat and Doug to do some synthesis of those things that come through, I'd love to hear just one other facilitator, just like Brian shared. Anybody else have like a really good story or anything really cool that came out of your group conversation?
Hey, Andrea, this is Darcy Lee.
Hi, friend. How are you?
Good. We had probably a little bit too much fun. It was myself and Calvin and Troy. And it was really interesting to see that we were talking through our things and there was like some like drastic overlapping of what those things were. And they kind of came down to a couple core things that all of us shared. So that was really interesting to be able to see that. So getting people out of their comfort zone and building their skill sets, aligning people as a team, building a community, using skill sets that are our unique abilities and multiple skill sets. And interestingly, doing something we've never done before.
Doing something you've never done before. So for all of you, your personal best was a challenging situation.
Right.
And you saw a lot of overlap and connectedness in your stories.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Thank you for sharing. And speaking of something you've never done before, congratulations on your promotion.
Oh, thank you.
So exciting.
Thank you.
New leadership challenges for you to step into. So well done.
Thank you.
Doug, what's coming through the chat?
We've got grace, trust, and genuine care of the team members from one of the groups. Open communications from Brian and his group, just like we spoke about before all the breakout rooms closed. Sharing the spotlight, Christy Brandt brought up. Thank you, Christy. And Christy, I told your story while we were in the breakout rooms to Matt and Andrea. I love that story. Open, honest, and frequent communication, change of mindset, recognize and treat people as people, and you'll accomplish a lot more together. Thanks, Eric. Building trust, leveraging relationships, and minimizing and moving past fear. Oh, I love that you brought up fear, Luke. I just think it's so important to face those fears head on. When you take their teeth away, you'll find that it may be one of your greatest avenues to strength, for sure. Donnie, relationships, getting out of your comfort zone and breaking things down, chunking things into smaller tasks. Most of our responsibilities these days are so complex. Jody wrote in building relationships and trust and working together and counting on each other. I've seen some recent research about collaboration being one of the key components to long-term success. Walk a journey together. Do you think Lewis cared more about Clark at the end of the journey or at the beginning? I'm pretty sure we all know the answer, and Jeff Tunn could probably describe it to us in great detail. Working from limited resources, push back from public and board, and working in spite of it. aligning people around goals and objectives and building community.
Yeah, so I'm sharing this framework on the screen now. I've referenced the leadership challenge already. These are the 5 practices of exemplary leadership that form the basis of their research. I suspect that some of you are familiar with this. It really answers the question, when leaders are at their best, what are they doing? So the exercise that you all just went through, I'm not surprised that Darcy says there's a lot of commonality, because this is the question that the researchers Kouzes and Posner have been asking for over 40 years. And what comes out of those conversations across all of the data are these 5 practices: modeling the way, inspiring a shared vision, challenging the process, enabling others to act, and encouraging the heart. And as Doug was rattling off all of your themes, I mean, we can easily put them into those categories. I heard him talk about mindset. I heard him talk about alignment to goals. I heard him you talked a lot, Doug, about challenging the process. So pushing yourself and others out of our comfort zone, taking risks, breaking things down into small manageable chunks. Those are all behaviors within challenging the process. And of course, we heard a ton about enabling and encouraging others, because at the end of the day, it is about the people that we are engaged with. And here's the thing, guys, that's so cool. Are you ready for the punchline? It's not a capability issue. It is an intentionality issue. All of you have just shared stories of your demonstration of these 5 practices. And so it is about taking the time to ask myself, what way am I modeling right now? What direction am I taking the people around me? How might I need to push myself out of my comfort zone? And then how do I get the best and encourage the people that are in this with me? Like a lot of organizations in 2020, March 2020 looked very different than January and February of 2020 for our small business. So as a professional services firm doing coaching and talent development, you can imagine what those early months were like for me as a business leader. I am perpetually positive and optimistic that last March, April, and May were the hardest in my professional career, particularly as a business leader. But what did I have? I had the foundation of this model and others. We came out of 2019 was the best year in the history of our firm. And we had very aggressive growth targets. And then on March 10th, everything got canceled, shifted. And so we went from historic revenue to, And so I will never forget. And I think it was like right around this time last year when I stepped away, I turned everything off. I wanted to cry. And I took a step back and I asked myself, okay, this is going to be hard. What way do I want to model through this? What are my values? How can I leverage them? What's our vision? Where are we going? How am I going to stay in this game and keep myself and others focused on that vision? And then what about the people? How do I enable my team? How do I encourage them through this? And created a plan. So that became such a foundation. Otherwise I would have been reacting from my emotions, from my fear, from a place of negativity. But because of this model and this perspective, it gave me something that grounded me around positive leadership. So no doubt. And here's the thing, I fell down so many times over the course of the year. I call at least 10 do-overs every single day, but there's learning in that. And then there's an opportunity to once again say, okay, now what way do I want to model? What vision am I inspiring? It's such a great system. You all are technical leaders. So here's the other thing I want to point out for you in this. You get systems and the value of connectedness and having structure around a process. For me, as I look at leadership development and when it fails, one of the things that lacks, remember I said grace and truth earlier, part of truth is structure and discipline. And so when we take leaders through this process, there's time in which they can grow. There's also a lot of accountability built in, and there's structure. So they know what we're learning when and what we're focused on when. You could really think of this as a system for leadership success, because it answers that question, like when leaders are really great, what are they doing? So it's behavioral in nature. You've heard me reference the behaviors within each of these practices. The research breaks down each of the 5 into 6 specific behaviors. So you can see them on the screen. And the reason I'm showing this to you is because it's actionable. So I mentioned earlier that the positiveness, the goodness in having structure around a growth process. When we take leaders through this process, it gives them something very tangible to actually do. So if I'm focused on challenging the process, I can say, okay, what does that look like? Well, that looks like seeking out challenging opportunities. That looks like challenging others to try out new ways. It looks like actively searching for innovative ways to improve. So I've actually got some specific things I can do to grow in that area. So thoughts or questions about this? I'm also curious, has anybody used the leadership challenge model, either for your own growth or the growth of others? So Doug, I'll just pause for a second and see if there's any questions or thoughts that come through before we close it out.
Yeah, please feel free to unmute and speak directly to Andrea if you like.
Yeah, just really curious about what's going on in your head as you're looking at the model and thinking about these behaviors.
So Andrea, this is Susan. This is a model that we use in some of our HR classes that we teach at IUPUI. And then also I would say, a big part of my leadership process in my new role definitely uses these 5 components. And I think a lot of that comes from the person that was my executive coach. This is what we use to identify some of my blind spots. And I think that's really helped me sort of develop over time.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you, Susan. So you've seen it with others and personally, you've seen the value. Yeah, great. Anyone else? Any other thoughts?
So this is Dennis. Andrea, I'm going to take the opposite of Susan. I'm not a manager or a leader. I used to be. I chose not to go down that path anymore. But looking at these, I've been doing all these, even though I really didn't know that there was this program out there.
Amazing.
So, and it's quite interesting that when I read some of these and the actionable items, it's nice to know that you're on the right track, because looking back, we see the success when you put these into practice. So this is a great reminder.
Dennis, thank you so much for sharing with vulnerability there. There's something really important about what you said. You said that you are not a leader, and yet you're demonstrating these things. I would say, doesn't that show your leadership and your influence? Because
all right, so let me clarify there. I don't get the leadership title or the pay, but yes, yeah. I am a leader.
Absolutely. You got it. Because the drop of water, you're influencing every day. Yeah. That's so great. Thank you, Dennis. Any other thoughts? Anything in the chat, Doug?
Nothing in the chat. Anyone else want to speak up? No, this is great. Matt, what stood out to you on Andrea's last few slides?
Yeah, thank you, Doug. So Andrea and I had an opportunity to confer before this presentation, right? And so, I really took all of these and tried to weave and feather them into my journey, my talk track, right? And so hopefully these pop through, in terms of challenging the process, enabling others to act, encouraging the heart, right? I tried to use those thematic themes, modeling the way, inspiring a shared vision, right? And bring those examples forward and kind of tie the two pieces together. But yeah, this is foundational and core, right? And regardless, to Dennis's point, regardless of your formal title, right? You carry an influence in the organization that belies the formal title, right? And it's really important that you recognize that as well, right? Because we all kind of go through and carry a wake with us, right? And so other people observe and watch, our behaviors and our intention, and for us to demonstrate and model that contributes to the culture and the spirit of the organization, right? And especially, nowadays when it's so tough for people to be together as a group, right? How do we present ourselves, and how do we model that in a broader context, even on, like a Zoom call like this, right?
So great. Thank you, Matt. So in our last few minutes, let's do something fun. I'd love to, sounds like there's a lot of good energy around this. I'm hearing not only in Matt's experience, the 5 practices and these behaviors, but in all of our experiences. So we've got some shared connection around them. And one of the questions that I get a lot from leaders is, I really want, Andrea, I really want to make a difference. Like, how do I do that? And so, the question is not like, we know that you do make a difference, because just like we said with Dennis, right? He's creating ripples every single day. So the real question is like, how do I make the difference that I want? And that really flows out of your values and your vision. Like, it's not challenge for the sake of challenge. It's, I'm going to challenge something because I believe in it. Last March, I could have said like, well, this business isn't going to work, but that never entered my mind, because it is who I am. We lead from the essence of who we are as a person. So how do I make the difference I want? Regardless of where we are or what the circumstance or situation, we can all ask ourselves that question. So individually, I've got an individual call to action, and then Doug, a collective call to action for the entire group. So it'll be fun to see how that plays out. So individually, which of the 5 practices will you focus on to enhance your leadership? Susan made a really good point. Susan said, I identified some blind spots through this model. So no doubt for all of us, we can look at this and say, because of my natural style and how I show up as a leader, this is an area that I could really focus on. So I challenge you and encourage you to do that. Doug, is there some way to get the deck out to this group? If I would send this to you, could you do that?
Yeah, I plan, if you would both send me your decks after the call, I'll make sure that they're both included on the follow-up email. So yes, the answer is yes.
Okay, great. And then the collective call to action is focused on encouraging the heart. We are living and leading through a time when we all need to be uplifted. Anxiety has never been more prevalent. Mental health issues have never been more prevalent. So let's encourage the hearts of the people that we lead collectively. Let's just take the next minute to send a text or an email or call someone. It's probably easier to text or email since we're on this virtual platform. And here's the thing, don't just say, I appreciate you, but say, hey, here's something I notice in you. Here's what I appreciate about you. And what we're doing is we're collectively sending out all of this goodness. Like, we're creating collective waves as a community. So let's just all do that. And then also pay attention to the lift that you get as you're sending that. Collective encouragement all around. So as I say goodbye to you all and turn it back over to Doug, this has been so fun to connect with new friends. On LinkedIn, I put out a lot of leadership content every single day through our podcast, Being at Work. I post a daily dose of leadership, and then I also post that on LinkedIn. So I would encourage you, if we aren't connected on LinkedIn, Andrea Butcher, you can find me there. I would love to do that. And also please subscribe to those daily doses of leadership. Those are great little 2 to 3 minute snippets that you can share with your team, with other leaders, and also get a boost yourself. So Doug and Matt, thank you so much. It's been so much fun collaborating with all of you. And I'll be eager to see what this group continues to do. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Andrea. Matt, thank you so much for sharing with us.
Love it. Thank you, guys.
Couple of final announcements before we finish up. I want to encourage every single one of you. We typically have between 50 and 90 on this call every other month, but the group was far smaller today, and I feel very confident that was because of the pre-work involved and the worry that transparency came out. So the fact that you were on this call and the fact that you were willing to be vulnerable and talk about your successes, which doesn't seem that vulnerable, but it is, quite frankly, and that you are willing to open up about that says a lot about who you are. Remember, team leads can be just as influential as formalized leaders. The org chart doesn't determine leadership. How you show up determines leadership. Thank you all for being involved with this group. I think it's an amazing bunch of people. And I look forward to seeing you face to face in the community as we all get vaccinated and maybe return to something that's closer to what normal looked like a year ago. I'm glad to know you. Watch out for the email, and you'll very likely be hearing from me in the next month. Remember to mark your calendars for April 20, the All IT Community event in the evening, and then the May 11th, the next bi-monthly peer group. Thank you. Have a great day. Bye now.
Thank you.
Great job,
Thank you, bro. Thank you, Brian.
Matt. I'll get in touch with you soon.